Hi, this is Savannah,
And this is Brian from the Dorky Diva Show,
and you're listening to Star Wars.
the best place for below average Star Wars.
In a world where people need 80s and 90s movie reviews, two regular Geordies combine forces to bring you the Brother to Brother 80s and 90s movie review podcast. Check them out on Twitter, YouTube, and all decent podcast vendors.
Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
I am Jason Hondo Ling.
And I'm Kat Risiauka.
And we are back with a brand new episode of Star Wars where we're going to deep dive into this brand spanking new Vanity Fair sort of deep article about Lucasfilm, about Star Wars, about the prep work that's gone in to these latest projects and about where the future's going. It's an in-depth article that we haven't had. Sort of Lucasfilm's thrown the secrecy out the window. Hope that continues for the Hasbro figures. Let's let Hasbro make figures in time for the TV shows, please. As we speak every week about things and we talk about how the secrecy can hinder things, but this seems to be a change in direction from Lucasfilm about what they're going to put out there marketing-wise, which is good. We've noticed a change in their social media presence lately where, they're a lot more fun and outgoing. Seem to have more of a pulse on social media the past couple of months, and then they're doing the same here with this article, this marketing article. So yeah, we're basically going to be talking about Star Wars, The Rebellion Will Be Televised. That's the article name. It's the cover story for the June issue of Vanity Fair. It's written by Anthony Brisnikin, and there's a lot of awesome photographs in the article by Annie Leibovitz, sorry about the stutter there, who has been taking Star Wars photos, for the last 40 years. Kat, let's go straight to you. What was the first main point you took from this article? What were your thoughts on it?
Well, this is an incredibly exciting article, and what really struck me was just how open Lucasfilm and particularly Kathleen Kennedy were being. There's sort of a shroud of secrecy around the Star Wars franchise. Everything's made in secret, and even what's upcoming is kept sort of really tightly under wraps. But this was a very open interview, and it was it was nice to see that Kathleen Kennedy sort of felt comfortable enough to talk about sort of the future of Star Wars. It's sort of it's reassuring because she kept emphasizing the fact that there's a roadmap and there's a plan, and I think that's something that has been lacking in perhaps the sequels a bit. Is there wasn't that planning, that sort of impacted the story. Yet, for the future of Star Wars and current Star Wars, there's clearly a plan, and it's exciting because Star Wars has always been connected. Every trilogy is connected, but now it's sort of every story is connected, and we're getting this metaverse, which is in the similar sort of direction as what Marvel have been doing for over a decade now with the multiverse. So seeing this much information about Star Wars in one go is so rare outside of Celebration, and to have this massive amount of information before a Celebration at the end of the month is just really exciting, and it's just tantalizing so much of what's to come.
Yeah, I think they picked the perfect time. I think this interview was conducted around March time. Obviously, they've released it now, just a few weeks out from Star Wars Celebration, when sort of Star Wars news and chatters starting to get very fever pitch. We've just had 2 trailers for Kenobi, and the Kenobi press tour is ongoing, started at the beginning of the week, ongoing now. So sort of Star Wars is everywhere once again, and then they've dropped this article sort of just in time to sort of really sort of grab the headlines. I think something in the article that I didn't quite agree with was from the writer himself, sort of saying that Rian Johnson, decided to take the script for Last Jedi in different directions and cut off some of J.J. Abrams' story points. When I think, for those who don't know, the script for The Last Jedi was locked in before The Force Awakens came out. J.J. himself had read the script. J.J. produced the movie, The Last Jedi, and he liked the script and liked the movie. So I think the sort of to paint it the way the writers painted it, I think is a little bit incorrect, a little bit misdirect. So I just wanted to get that done off the bat there. Wasn't the case of, The Rise of Skywalker, where episode 9 was called Duel of Fates, totally different movie, and then they've brought in different writers. I think it's good that Kathleen's sort of saying, we're looking to have, sort of a roadmap, a foundation of where we're going. I think that can only be for the best. It means you avoid things like having to change one entire movie to another, like what happened with The Rise of Skywalker. So yeah, I think only good things can come of that. One other comment was sort of saying, they learned with, Solo perhaps that, to be careful about legacy characters and recasting. I think a lot of chatter online is going to say Kathleen Kennedy and Lucas almost said we will no longer recast legacy characters, and that's not quite what you're saying. What you're saying is that they need to look at it, they make sure it's the right fit, the right project, and also that the project is marketed correctly. I think there's a lot of issues with Solo that weren't just down to the casting.
I mean, Solo had to compete with Infinity War, and Marvel fans are just as massive as Star Wars fans. So, it was never going to do as well because of the timing it was released.
Well, this is what I've said today, sort of on Twitter. I've said, problem with Solo was the marketing and the timing. The problem you had was that the Marvel marketing was fantastic. The Solo marketing, they had some good stuff at Denny's restaurants in America, some good gifts, but the mainstream marketing was awful, wasn't almost non-existent. I think Marvel caters for not just Marvel fans, but also the general movie-going audience or into Marvel movies more so than Star Wars. And I think that movie probably should have came out at Christmas, like December time, when that's the current Star Wars plan was what had been. That's people used to a Star Wars movie in December, so they should have done that. Marketed better, and like I said, I think you would have seen Star Wars break even, Solo break even, Solo make some money, and then like we wouldn't be having this conversation about how casting ruined the movie, because I don't think casting had anything to do with the performance of the movie. So yeah, but obviously I think in this article, not in any article is any producer going to break down, the reasons why a movie failed. I think she's just saying we need to be careful with what we're doing with legacy characters, which I think they do need to be careful, but there's also room there to do lots with legacy characters as long as you're doing the right things. But a lot of outlets, including Collider, which I was very surprised about, are sort of saying that just sort of threw Solo under the bus and threw casting legacy characters, like recasting them under the bus, and it's like, that's not the case at all. That really is sort of pouring pepper on something and setting it on fire. I think, we've just got Obi Wan Kenobi coming back to screens this month, who is a recast. Ahsoka's coming to screens, who is a recast. Do you know what I mean? The recasts are right there in front of our eyes. Big part of Andor, who is in these pictures, the lovely pictures that have been taken with this article, is Mon Mothma, a recast. So, the facts are right there that Lucasfilm is in fact doing recasts still, and as long as they're doing it right, it's going to be great. Jason, what's your thoughts on sort of all that, what's been said?
Yeah, no, I think what you said is dead on. It's the usual thing of people grab a bit of an article and run with it without putting it into the context that it should be in. And rightly so. I think there's a place for recasting as long as it's done right. For me, a classic example is that, you know, the character of Luke Skywalker, there's loads of stuff they can do with him, which they've started to do with both The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. And, you've got an actor like Mark Hamill that is openly said, I would happily guide someone who wants to play the character if I feel they're the right fit. So to shut the door on it, I don't think it's the right thing to do, and I don't think that's, like you said, that isn't what Kathleen Kennedy said. But it's the usual thing. Once an article like this goes out, people grab bits and put it out into what they want people to go with. Um, but overall, this article was, for me, really interesting. The way it broke down. Interesting about Solo, because I also read a bit of an article by Ron Howard where he was talking about Solo and the respect that he had for the previous directors that he took over from and the story that they'd done. He very much said he came into it with their blessing because they couldn't agree with Lucasfilm what was going on, and he took it over from there. Um, but I've also been reading another article about Marvel by the Russo brothers, talking about how they've worked with Marvel whilst other directors can't, because they've been open to adjusting the story to fit what Marvel wanted to achieve. In the day Now we're in the days of where these big studios, it's not like you're making a film for one film. We're now seeing like Star Wars, there's a continuing arc. The stories go, although they go off in different areas, they're all tying in together, and the same with the Marvel universe. So, directors in some way have got to respect that it may be their film, but it's the universe that they're making the film for. And if they can't respect that, then they're not going to fit in as a director for that franchise.
Definitely. And I think, Kathy goes on to say in the article about, it's not a case of you coming in and shooting something for a couple of months and then doing post-production and getting it out within a year and a half. It's like, you come in, you're working on development of the project. You then move on to production of the project, and then we do post-production, and we sort of put it out, and it could be a 5-year process, which I think, is right. I think Kathy said, the most perfect experience she's had since took over the company was with Rian Johnson. Just, everything clicked with him. There was no arguments. They loved his script. They loved to the final cut of the movie he handed in. It was almost like a perfect synergy between the studio and him. So yeah, I think, people do need to come in and be open. I think in the article as well, she talks about how sort of Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau sort of put together, as they both had sort of awesome ideas on a similar thing, Mandalorians, lone gunslingers, but had sort of slightly different ideas on how they came together and actually sort of bonded and, make each other better, push each other, educate each other, to sort of push these stories even further, which I think is another great opportunity of people working together to sort of push things forward. Sort of, I think that the talk in the article about Jon Favreau's, he brought up the idea of the child and how problematic that is. You're bringing in a Yoda species, and how does that work? And it came from the Jedi Temple. How does that work? And then you've got someone like Dave Filoni who, if that idea is possible, he will be able to figure that out. And it probably took a long time, but he was able to, put together the visual where it is like, okay, we're going to show a flashback of the child in the Jedi Temple, the clones coming in. He knows about that part of Star Wars history. You can make that fit and make sense, without being sort of a shoe-in. I just hope that, they're talking a lot here about sort of working together and sort of, setting the foundations going forward. And I think, if you go back to Mandalorian Season 1, certain directors on that project, Deborah Chow came and did an episode. She's now, she's overseeing this Obi Wan Kenobi show. Someone who they obviously liked working with. I think that's what's great about these shows, is that, if someone comes in and does an episode in sort of that that connection's there, and that sort of fluid workings there, and the relationships there between them and the studio, then I think there's opportunities to bring them in for more. So, Deborah Chow, who, is world renowned for directing, she's came in and been on this Kenobi show now, for a few years. And she's had to probably give up other projects to do that, but, she's been willing to do that. I think that's what's really, really good about it. Kat, what's the next point that you took from the article?
The next point we took is sort of what we've been talking about, is about these legacy characters and how much thinking and consideration has to go into who to bring into a series and why. And Kathleen stressed that when Deborah Chow was writing the Kenobi series, and they were considering bringing Vader in, it was the why. What could Vader's presence bring to the story? It wasn't just the fact that, Vader is cool, let's put him in here, it will attract more viewers. It had to make sense for the story. And the interview pointed out that originally Vader wasn't planned for the Kenobi show, and that Hayden's return was something that Deborah Chow herself wanted to do and which she pushed for. She sees, the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, as this brotherly bond, and that, Obi-Wan can't just give up on him. And this sort of rematch is Obi-Wan not giving up on Anakin, even though he's become Vader. At this point, Obi-Wan thinks that Anakin is dead. He thinks he killed him. So Obi-Wan obviously has a lot of guilt. So to realize that Vader is Anakin, that's going to present a lot of moral questions to Obi-Wan, and he's not going to just give up on Anakin. So the amount of time, effort, and thought that's clearly gone into putting Vader into this show actually has eased a lot of my worries about sort of this rematch that's been hinted at for such a long time, because fans don't want it to undermine that ending of Revenge of the Sith. We thought that was the end of Obi-Wan and Anakin, and fans also don't want it getting in the way of A New Hope, when Vader says, "When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master." Yet this interview stresses just how carefully they had to think about putting Vader, a legacy character, into a show. And that clearly goes the same for a character like the Child, not a legacy character, but a legacy species. So there's a lot to balance there, because the essential part of Yoda actually is his mystery, and you don't want to reveal too much about that. And sort of bringing in like characters like Ahsoka, they take planning as well, because she has so much backstory. So it's a consideration for these legacy characters that is really important for the story writers. And I found that a very interesting part of this interview.
Jason, what were your sort of thoughts on sort of that point and the legacy characters and sort of the care and the the thought process that goes into bringing them back or not?
Yeah, no, it's something that I know has been discussed quite a lot in the past in like the gallery and that, and I know for a fact that Dave Filoni was obviously quite standoffish to begin with the idea of messing with Yoda, because I know it was something that George had always said. We don't say where Yoda's from and all this, but the way that they dealt with it and the way they created the character, it's good that they're taking that much care and protecting the legacy of those characters. Likewise, up until I have to say, up until the point that I read this article, I was still worried about the whole idea of Darth Vader being in this series. And then listening to Cat there and reading what I've read, I sort of, yeah, it's the right thing to do, and it will actually sort of hopefully tie up almost a loose end as to, how did Obi Wan find out Darth was Anakin, and also, bringing back Hayden Christensen to begin with. I thought, do they really need to? It could be, normally it was a bigger actor with the James Earl Jones voice. And then in that Vanity Fair article, there's this amazing photograph that Annie Leibovitz has took of Hayden pairing for one of the duels with the Obi-Wan stunt double. And just by his stance, everything, he's not in costume, he's just got like a cape over him, but by the stance and the frame of his body, I can see the costume on him, and I can see him playing that character. And that in itself has sort of proved to me this guy's done the work to, he's played Anakin. It's his rightful place to go on and play Darth Vader, or a younger Darth Vader, because, he's made the character his own. And obviously, I suspect we haven't had clarification. I suspect they're going to use James Earl Jones's voice, unless they do a few scenes with the helmet off where he speaks. Who knows? But no, the way they're going about with the legacy characters, again, also they talk about the work that they did with Luke Skywalker, and I just think they really have worked hard to perfect that. So I think they're going in the right direction, definitely.
I would be so excited if there was actually a scene where Hayden had the mask off and he was talking to Obi-Wan, just like he does to Ahsoka in the season finale of Rebels season 3, because that would be heart-wrenching, and to have that sort of moment between the two would be epic cinema.
Definitely. I imagine it will be James Earl Jones who's back with the voice. I imagine they won't announce that. I imagine it'll just happen in the episode. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Kat, when you talk about season 2 finale, Twilight of the Apprentice of Rebels, where you have James Earl Jones voicing Vader. Then you have the moment where sort of the mask is slit, and it's sort of a, half and half, like some Vader talk, some you hear Anakin's voice come through. And if we have, it is absolutely tragic. And if we have the same again, where the mask's compromised in some way or comes off entirely, who knows? Never know. Maybe imagine if Vader sort of took the mask off to say, look at what you've done to my face.
Oh my gosh, my heart.
Like almost if he does it to sort of, because he knows it's going to make Obi-Wan, emotional. So what if he actually goes, look at my face, look at these hands that aren't real, these legs aren't real, look at my face. You made this monster. You made this Sith Lord, which we all know is sort of not true, but physically you could say maybe it is true. And Kenobi's definitely going to blame himself for it anyway. So by doing that, it would just pour the tragedy on. Do you know what I mean? But I think definitely, again, I think, the way Dave Filoni used Vader in Rebels, almost like The Undertaker in wrestling, like less is more. You don't need to have loads of Vader. He's that much of a huge presence that if you sprinkle him in the right places with the right story, he just hits massively. So I think, again, I think he's going to be looming over the show, but I think we're hardly going to see him in, every episode. But I think, again, sort of use right, less is more, and it's more meaningful that way. And obviously, Jason, you were saying that photo of Hayden sort of practicing with the Obi Wan Kenobi stunt double, sort of with the cape on. It does look absolutely, he looks menacing, looks fantastic. You really do feel that presence. Kat, did you have a favourite photo from the photos in the Vanity Fair magazine?
I think my favorite has to be the shot of Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma. She looks absolutely stunning as the senator, and it's the first time that we've really had sort of concrete proof that Mon Mothma's story is going to be a big part of Andor. They say in the interview actually that it's split between Cassian Andor and Mon Mothma, and she's a character that I really love and want to see more of. So that photo of her as Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma in a senatorial gown that is sort of the perfect mix of her prequels appearance coming up to her sort of Return of the Jedi appearance. I just love that photo.
Yes, it is. It is wonderful. I'm not quite sure which photo was my best. I just loved all the photos, sort of behind the scenes. Look at the characters, some of the characters back in costume. I think you're right. Genevieve O'Reilly's Mon Mothma costume does look very grand, very Trandrilla esque. Kenobi, obviously Obi Wan donning the clothes. Obviously, there's a video behind the scenes video that's gone online where you can see why he's wearing the hood, because he's actually, he's back on set just for the photo shoot, and he's actually cut his hair. Which I thought was really, really cool. I think the picture from the front cover of obviously Mando, Obi Wan, Ahsoka, and Andor is obviously, that's almost like this phase one of television's biggest stars going forward. So, I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I just thought absolutely fantastic. Speaking of sort of, the whole articles about the future of Star Wars being sort of in television. She talks a bit in the article about movies. The next movie probably is going to be Taika Waititi's movie, written by Christy Wilson Cairns, the writer of 1917. That's probably going to arrive first. We don't know what that's about. And then obviously Rogue Squadron, which has been produced and directed by Patty Jenkins, coming after. I'm glad there's no sort of time frame on them. Again, let's let the creative juices flow. Let's give these projects the time they need. I think, if you think about it, from 2015 to 2019, Lucasfilm as a production company were churning a movie out every year, a blockbuster caliber movie every year, and like that can be tiring and can be hard to keep an eye on, to be that prolific for that amount of time in Hollywood. George would do one Star Wars movie every 3 years and then have like a 10-year gap between trilogies. So I think the fact that this television's in place, the fact they've developed this essentially effects in camera system, what George was hoping to design when he had the company, but he just didn't have the budget for it at the time. Money and technology's caught up now, and we've got this. I've got the name of it now, but the
volume.
The volume, yeah, obviously, which is essentially effects in camera. Allows them to produce these TV shows and movies like really, really well, without having to sort of logistically move too much, which I think is great. So yeah, I'm glad the movie's got a chance to breathe. I'm glad these TV shows are coming together quite naturally, which is good, and have this sort of roadmap planned in. There's a bit in there where Kenny talks about sort of hesitant to use the word trilogies, talking about Star Wars being a more persistent storytelling tool. And Star Wars has always been persistent storytelling because, yes, we had the original trilogy, and then we had the prequel trilogy, but we always had books and comics in between that tied things in. So it was always sort of a giant sort of universe of story, with sort of these trilogies as starting points, I would say, or entry points, you could say. So yeah, I think obviously, things are looking good for Rian Johnson's trilogy. I think at the end of the day, Rian Johnson is a very busy man. I think his Knives Out movie was a big deal. Academy Award nominated for the script, made a lot of money at the box office, critically acclaimed. So obviously, just wrapped production on number 2, I think. I think he's got a Netflix deal in as well to make multiple more now, like 3 to 4. So, but we know how much you love Star Wars, how much you love storytelling, and you'll have that story there. So I imagine he will be back for a Star Wars project at some point, just when the time is right. And again, as it says in the article, these things, and Ryan knows, considering he did The Last Jedi, you come in and it could be like a 4 to 5 year process. So he's going to do that when that's right for him, where he knows he can give that his all. And I think that's the right way to do it. What was the next point you had up, Kat?
Oh, so the next point is the Vanity Fair interview gave a little bit more information about Leslie Headland's The Acolyte, which is another upcoming Disney Plus show. So we've known for quite a while that it was going to be set well before the Skywalker saga, but this interview has confirmed it's going to be set at the end of the High Republic era. Now, this is a really big deal. For Star Wars fans who haven't been keeping up with the literature, which is no particular problem. You don't have to be immersed in everything to understand Star Wars. It does help, but the High Republic has been a huge literature phase since 2021. And it started with Charles Soule's The Light of the Jedi. And it's set 250 years before The Phantom Menace, at what is known as sort of the golden era of the Jedi and the Republic. So this is dealing with completely new characters. It's not tied into the Skywalker saga in any way. The only sort of character who has appeared within it that fans would know is Yoda, because Yoda species has an amazing lifespan. But again, because he's a legacy character, he only appears when the time is right for him. So to have this confirmation that the Acolyte is going to be sort of set within this era is really exciting, because it can directly link to this literature phase that's ongoing, and it's also giving sort of a bit more free reign to the story, because it's literally linked to nothing except the literature.
Yeah, I think I was really excited about Acolyte anyway, about this hopefully this like dark side mythology getting told, lore getting told. High Republic, I'm only 2 books in, and because I'm a slow reader, as everybody who listens knows. But I have loved it, this new era I've been in, and I've got the other books to read, and I am reading them. So to have this show announced as sort of going to come on the back end of that era, it's like makes us want to read those books even more, because I'm enjoying them, and I know we're going to get an even bigger payoff when I couldn't watch The Acolyte, which was something I was already excited for anyway. So it's like 2 things coming together to sort of in perfect harmony. Jason, what's your thoughts on sort of The Acolyte and where it's set and what we're going to get from it?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing something a little bit different. Obviously pre-Skywalker, but still very much with the Jedi and the Sith. And I like that. I was reading, I think in the article they were talking about how they've been able to play with the Jedi. And the Jedi are more cleaner, almost in uniforms with white and gold robes, and it's gonna. It sounds like they're aiming for a different Jedi to what we're used to. And then obviously we'll see how they end up. Hopefully, where we end up finding them in like the Phantom Menace. So there's so much potential there. Everyone loves the stories of the idea of the Jedi and the Sith, this good and bad, and this magical force. And then obviously there's also the grayer elements of the good and the bad together. That's sort of almost a swear word to the Jedi. And obviously, there's the rule of 2, and yet we've seen with like the Inquisitors, there are still these darker Jedi, which is something that I suspect that would come into obviously the Acolyte and everything. So all in all, it's a series that they're drip feeding us information about it, and I think it's building it up to something more to look forward to. I do. I'm beginning to think, and also comments that have been made by like Pedro Pascal and that. I've got a feeling the Mandalorian's going to start winding down to a natural sort of It's not going to go on forever. I don't think we're going to see a second season of Book of Boba Fett. I think that's going to be a one-shot deal. So there's still a lot to look forward to, and what this Taika Waititi film, could this be going in the sequels direction? Or again, we don't know what his idea is. So the Acolyte is definitely something that I'm looking forward to, because it's a time frame we're not used to, which means it'll bring a newness. But obviously they've still got to stay true to Star Wars.
I think newness is also very important because fans are always finding Star Wars for the first time. There are kids who will be growing up with these Disney Plus programs, perhaps instead of the movies. So to have new characters for them, I think is very important, because everybody's got their Star Wars characters. Like I sort of grew up on the sequels, so to me, the sequel characters are extra special. Whereas if you were to ask, somebody who was a child from the 80s, the original trilogy characters are special. But now, if you were to ask somebody, a child here in the 2020s, they might be starting to talk about Ahsoka and the Mandalorian. So it's very important to have these new characters for new fans to connect to, and to help move away from the legacy characters and the Skywalker saga, because those characters can't continue forever. They do need eventually to be replaced by new characters, and now is the time to start doing it.
Definitely. I think here's the thing, if every decade you have a new set of characters, those characters become legendary. So you almost have, legendary and legacy characters on a wheel, and it'll keep flowing. And each generation will have their own legend, which I think's important and what Star Wars has always done. It's funny about legacy characters and generational. Obviously, Hugh McGregor, big part of the huge part of the prequel era. It turns out his wife, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, has joined the cast of Ahsoka, so that could be Ewan and Mary's child will have sort of a dad who was a legacy character in the prequel era, and we don't know who Mary Elizabeth Winstead will be playing in these sort of series, but a link to Star Wars in the now, which I think is pretty cool. I think we haven't really spoke about Andor much. Shall we go into that, Kat? Do you want to tell us sort of what you got out of the article to do with Andor? I think one of the most exciting things I read in the article was how we're going to get Andor and his sort of story arc, but also we're going to get Mon Mothma's arc and how those two characters sort of come together. I thought it was very exciting.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel sorry for that. Yeah, we completely sort of skimmed over Andor, even though that's probably the main part of this article. So Andor is upcoming. I think it's supposed to be coming out later this year, and it's going to be focusing on Diego Luna's Cassian Andor from Rogue One. I think his character did make a big impact in that film, especially with that sacrifice he makes at the end. So this is going back to, how do we get to a character who's willing to sacrifice himself for the rebellion? That's sort of the question that this series is going to be posing. And Cassian is going to find himself forced to move from planet to planet to try and escape the radicalization and imperialism of the Empire. So it's going to be the building blocks of his wanting to rebel. And then at the same time, yes, we're going to be getting Mon Mothma's arc. So I'm assuming that the series might be something like a 50-50 split between the two of them. And, she's still the senator of Chandrila for this time, even though, the Imperial Senate doesn't have particularly much power because of Palpatine. but she's still a political figure. So it's how does she set up this rebellion in a clandestine way without getting caught. So it's really going back to the building blocks for the rebellion, which has been sort of mentioned a bit in Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. We've seen it in Star Wars Rebels, but now we're seeing it with like a really big player of Mon Mothma, and of course, Andor is this very important character. We know the important part he's going to play, and it's seeing how his character develops to that, which I think is going to be really interesting because we know where his story ends.
We do indeed. It's this sort of, Andor's a man who, without being under the influence of anything, gives his life for a greater cause, knowingly. In that moment of Rogue One, that's what he does with him and Jyn Erso. So we're going to see how this guy goes from being a child greatly affected by the Clone Wars to, being part of a separatist world, deciding to fight for the rebellion and believing it so much that he will ultimately give his life for it. And might not start there, but we're going to see him go towards that while seeing Mon Mothma sort of start, the early process of challenging the Empire, and how do we go about changing this evil dictatorship, one-party state government that's only got itself and sort of the elite in mind and not the rest of the people of the galaxy. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think Andor could be like the sleeper show. I think Kenobi, Ahsoka, Boba Fett, Mandalorian, all sort of big characters. I think Andor sort of been on the back burner for a while. Not getting talked about much, but to me, I think that could be the greatest series of them all. I think could be Cassian Andor. I think I'm really excited for Andor and where it's going to go. It's had a huge shoot, loads of locations. It's going to be massive, and I think I'm really excited to see the series as it unfolds. Jason, sort of what's your thoughts on the Andorness of this article and the Andor series coming up?
I absolutely loved reading the beginning part of this article where Diego Luna talked about obviously where he was sat in the taxi trying not to mention Star Wars. And again, that just highlighted the secrecy that the actors realise. And later on in the article, obviously Rosario Dawson completely counteracted that with how she's been so open. It's got her into trouble with Disney just a couple of times. But yeah, no, Andor's a series that I've been looking forward to for quite a while. Um, and I know I've been reading recently that it's gone from originally it was going to be 6 seasons and now it's down to 3. Which maybe they're going for the trilogy arc again. And it's something that I found quite interesting because, like you've said yourselves there, with the idea of it being Cassian's journey. Obviously, when they originally announced this, it was announced that it was going to be both Diego Luna and Alan Tudyk, and obviously he's not been in this first season, which sort of stands true to me because I think we need to see the Cassian Andor character first. And I'm hoping that season 2's then going to bring us this meeting where he's going to meet obviously K2S, K2SO, and then obviously go on to the third season where we can see the two of them, now that they've bonded, going off on their adventures together. So that's the sort of natural progression I'm hoping for. Whether I've got a grasp of it, I don't know, but it would make sense to me from a storytelling point of view. And obviously, again, the idea of this learning more about the character of Mon Mothma and where she was to where we get to see her in obviously the original trilogy. And it's a character that's popped up all over the place and has deep history in Star Wars. So it's nice now to see that it looks like she's going to get some serious screen time, and we'll be able to explore that character that's already quite loved by all of the fans.
Kat, is there anything else from the article that we need to discuss?
I mean, that's sort of the main bones of the article, and if people are interested in what we're talking about, please do go and read the article, and go and read the extended Q&A with Kathleen Kennedy, because it really is fascinating to read. And I think probably the best place to end this is my favorite quote from the article. Kathleen said, "Star Wars is one story." And I think that's probably the most perfect way to describe the galaxy far, far away.
Definitely, I think it's hit the nail on the head. I think the way that sentence is structured, I think all of Star Wars, it's one story. You can intertwine in many different areas. You can start in different areas and work your way forward or backwards, or you can go backwards and forwards. But the story is accessible for everyone. And like I said, you can jump in and then explore the whole story, or you can just jump in and explore the parts of the story you want to explore, and it's totally up to yourself. And I love that about it. I think some of the other things that were mentioned was sort of the John Watts, obviously directors the Spider movies over at sort of Marvel / Sony, is sort of looking into doing something. Lucasfilm, obviously in development. Obviously, there's been lots of things in development that haven't been mentioned in this article, because, as we all know, they'll be developing so many ideas, but again, only so many of them will actually get greenlit in the end. Things that were missing from the article was the current series, sorry, not series, the movie that Kevin Feige is producing, which I think now has a writer, and the writer's been talking about writing it this week. Again, it's a movie that's in development, doesn't mean it's going to get greenlit. You'd like to think with someone's caliber of Kevin Feige, working on it will get greenlit, but again, it's a case of, it could be 5 or 8 years down the line, the movie. I don't think the in development series for Young Lando was mentioned either. Again, a series that's in development, but may or may not get greenlit in the end. Was there any projects, Kat, that you think I've missed that weren't mentioned in the article that have been mentioned in the past?
Not particularly. I think they're saving most of that for Celebration. I think the only mention was that there was one. I think it's got a code name at the moment, which might be the one that the Star Wars Homecoming writer is doing, and that's apparently set post Return of the Jedi, but focusing on child characters, so not the legacy characters.
Jason, what's your thoughts on sort of what we've been speaking about there?
Yeah, no, the one you're talking about there is Grammar Rodeo,
That's
which
the
is
one.
it's been codenamed after a Simpsons episode, which is quite interesting because they're describing it as a galactic version of classic Amblin coming of age adventure films of the 80s.
I would say that all of Star Wars is coming of age adventures.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that one sounds quite interesting. The fact that there's already a casting call out just goes to show that how far forward that one is. So it'll be quite interesting to see. Something that we sort of touched on earlier. There's one bit in this whole article that I really liked, and that's because it's the techie behind the scenes geek in me. It was where they talked about the volume or stagecraft, as they call it, which obviously was innovated by John Favreau and ILM and all the guys that work behind the scenes. And as Bryce Dallas Howard pointed out, is actually inspired by an idea that George Lucas has always sort of subscribed to, that one day you'd be able to film in your backyard using technology. And it was quite interesting where they said they were still right up to the last minute worried about whether it was going to work. And then it wasn't until James Cameron came in to watch a bit that they'd shot, and he had to take his glasses off and stare at the screen because he was trying to see if he could see what was fake and what wasn't real. I thought that was a lovely story of how, Disney, Lucasfilm have always innovated and they continue to do so. And I think that just goes to show how important they as a company, and also how important the Star Wars saga is to filmmaking in general. We now see like the likes of Batman, or the Batman, using the technology that was really first tried out here, and it is going to be a big change, especially since COVID. The way that things can be filmed. Um, so all in all, this article for me has really whetted my appetite for more and more stuff to come. So yeah, but definitely that grammar rodeo, I'm definitely going to be interested in seeing what that's about. To me, it feels like it's more aimed at younger children. I think this is almost Disney and Lucasfilm going down the Ewok route, and the Endor films that they did post Return of the Jedi. So it'd be interesting to see what they've come up with.
Let's hope more people watch them than watch those ones. Otherwise, I might have a couple of more duds on my hands. Kat, which of all the TV shows and projects mentioned, which are you most looking forward to and why?
I have to say Ahsoka because she's my second favorite Star Wars character, and I think the story is definitely going to be picking up on Rebel season 4's ending. It's hinted at, in season 2 of The Mandalorian, that she's still after Grand Admiral Thrawn. So I think it's definitely got to be that one, because there is so much there that they could do, and I want the Chiss Ascendancy in live action. I can't wait to see more of Ahsoka in live action. I want Sabine in live action. There's so much I want from that series, and with Dave Filoni at the helm, I just know it's going to be incredible.
Jason, what's yours?
I have to say, Ahsoka's the one that I'm dying for, because being a huge Rebels fan, as everyone knows, and a huge fan of what Ashley Eckstein did through Clone Wars and Rebels, creating the character. It's something, and also I have no problem with the way Rosario Dawson portrays the character either. I think they made the right call there. As much as I love Ashley, I just think that was the right call to go for. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. The tease that we got this week with the chair and the hat and everything, just pleased to see that moving forward. Also, obviously, we've got. It looks like I suspect Mando's gonna land exactly the same time as Book of Boba Fett did last year. So I think that's going to be the end of this year, right into the beginning of next year, which also fits with previous series of Mando anyway. Um, uh, I believe we're going to see Andor in September. That would fit them with the scheduling for everything else. And whether we see Bad Batch after Andor, I don't think it'll come before. Will be interesting. That's a series that noticeably they didn't go into much, but obviously that's animated. But it is still quite a large part of the whole story that they're running with at the moment. There's quite a lot in there. And also, we've sort of seen that the end of the Bad Batch looks like it ties in quite nicely with what's been going on in Mandalorian. So it could be interesting to see everything that's coming out, but definitely the one that I can't wait for, but obviously got to wait until next year, is going to be Ahsoka. Um, and I think Ahsoka will probably fall around the same time as, well, I'd like to say as Obi Wan is this year, but it might fall into the Andor slot next year. But we've got so much to come at the moment. It's an exciting time to be a fan of Star Wars.
As I've been saying since Disney bought the company, we're now living in the golden age of Star Wars. Star Wars will live forever now. There'll be new projects constantly, and it will dart between eras. To begin with, it was sort of, we're sticking to this sequel era, but now the sequel trilogy's done. We're darting off to High Republic. We're darting off to, this in between sort of the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. We're back telling Kenobi stories. That's sort of in the prequel era, nearly into the original trilogy era. It truly is the golden age of Star Wars. So it's never been a better time to be a Star Wars fan. Jason, have you been buying any Star Wars merchandise recently?
No, my bank balance at the moment is oh, actually, I was gifted some nice Star Wars merchandise. I've got I have been lucky enough. My flat is about to be decorated. I'm actually sat here with a giant Force Awakens Stormtrooper framed picture, which is a really nice piece of artwork. And I've also got a Darth Vader and Stormtrooper framed picture, two slightly more A4 sized ones. They'll be going up on the wall, so I was quite lucky to be gifted those. But at the moment, I'm being very good, trying to behave myself. But Lego keep bringing out so many kits. It's just, yeah, I haven't got enough room for them all. So I'm actually thinking about selling some of my other Lego to make room for Star Wars. But all in all, no, I haven't got anything at the moment. I'm hoping I might get a few gifts tomorrow, but we will see.
Kat, same question to you. Any recently new Star Wars purchases or any new merch that you've got on show?
No, not particularly at the moment. All the Black Series figures I fancy are coming out next year, and the Lego Star Wars reveals have not been taking my fancy whatsoever. The next Lego I'm after actually is Baby Groot.
I'm sort of waiting to see what we're going to be getting sort of at Celebration from Hasbro Black Series wise as the exclusives, because I haven't actually seen that published yet. Obviously, I'm not going to Celebration, but I will be reaching out to try and get one. I think, as mentioned last episode, I'm about to sell my house. So I think, once that's all said and done, it could be months away, and, these things can take time. I think once we get our new house, I think I'm going to treat myself to a helmet. I don't have a helmet in my collection, and I've heard good things about the Black Series line of helmets, so I'm thinking about getting myself a helmet to go in the Detolf and go on display. I think that wraps it up for the episode. Kat, have you got any closing thoughts?
It's just been wonderful, really, just to have so much information about Star Wars, what's upcoming, and to have this little glimpse inside the workings of Lucasfilm at the moment.
And yourself, Jason, any closing arguments or thoughts?
No, I can only echo really what you and Kat have said there. It's a lot of exciting information coming out, and it's nice to see that Lucasfilm are opening up on what's going on, which sort of knocks on the head some of the rumour mills that you hear. But no, still plenty to talk about, as always.
Definitely. And for those who are interested, obviously at the beginning of the month, I attended Star Wars Fan Fun Day at Blackburn's Ewood Park. There is an article I wrote for that, or I reviewed the event. It was a great event, which is up at Jedi News. So check that out on their website. Kat, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Kat Kylo on Twitter. Always happy to talk Star Wars and anything Kylo Ren.
And yourself, Jason?
as always, at Hondo Ling, pretty much there, and also at Jason Ling Photography is my other one. If you want to have a look at some of the photos that I'm starting to put up as well.
Yep, obviously Jason, is ventured out to his own business. He started Jason Ling Photography. Definitely check it out. I think lots of different events. You can do sort of weddings, proms, people in costume. You could probably do cosplayer photo shoots, advertising photo shoots for businesses. I imagine you can do it all, Jason. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm going to be getting out a bit more during the conventions, probably covering more for Jedi News guys. And I really want to. I enjoy playing around with the photos. So also any cosplayers that want to reach out, I'm more than happy to have a go at doing some nice artwork. And I also have all my own printing facility as well, so I can always do that for you guys at the same time.
There we go, the full shebang over at Jason Ling Photography. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Geordie Jedi Pete. You can find the podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Star Wars Podcast. And you can find the podcast on Twitter at Boars Star. If you are listening to this podcast on Apple Music or on Spotify, there is a feature where you can leave us a review. Please leave us a top review, 5-star review, nice little comment. Just helps other people find the podcast and helps us book guests for the show. If you're listening on one of the many other places you can get podcasts and there's a review feature, again, please, if you don't mind, just leave us a top review. Again, it just helps us out. It's something you can do for free that supports the show. But that's all from me. May the force be with everybody. And remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.